live. I just have to start the recording locally.
Tell us
We're
what.
recording. You're all set. Go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 2000. And I'd like to start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Wanda Brooks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
Justice.
and justice
for all.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Roll
Proceed.
call. Commissioner Alton,
Present.
Commissioner Creighton,
Present.
Commissioner Acevedo,
Present.
Commissioner Rechner. Present. Commissioner Brooks,
Present.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Present.
Chairman Morelli. Case number 3145, application of John Flynn of 18 Illinois Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.19 use, 9-105.19C lot area, 9-105.19E front yard, 9-105.19F side yard, 9-105.19G rear yard, 9-105.19 I density, house elevation at 18 Illinois Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 58, Block 103, Lot 22, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Who will introduce a motion on this application?
Make a motion to grant.
Commissioner Leonetti has introduced a motion to grant the application. Who will second?
I'll second the motion.
Chairman Morelli has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton,
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton,
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo, Commissioner Rechner,
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks,
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Grant.
Chairman Morelli. This application has been granted. Case number 3147, application of Israel Cohen of West Penn Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.8 use, 9-105.8 density, 9-112.1 off-street parking, to convert a one-family into a two-family at 380 West Penn Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 51, Lot 167, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Who will introduce a motion on this application?
I'll introduce a motion to deny.
Commissioner Alton has introduced a motion to deny this application. Who will second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Leonetti has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton,
Deny.
Commissioner Creighton,
Deny.
Commissioner Acevedo,
Deny.
Commissioner Rechner,
Deny.
Commissioner Brooks,
Deny.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Aye.
Chairman Morelli.
Aye.
This application has been denied. Case number 3148, application of Timothy and Randy Kinsley of 22 Tennessee Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.19A use, 9-105.19C lot area, 9-105.19B building area, 9-105.19E front yard, 9-105.19F side yard, 9-105.19G rear yard, 9-105.19 I density for new decks at 26 Tennessee Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 266, Lot 1, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Who will introduce a motion on this application?
I'll make a motion to grant.
Commissioner Rechner has introduced a motion to grant the application. Who will second?
Second it.
Second.
Chairman Morelli has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton,
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton,
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo, Commissioner Rechner,
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks,
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Grant.
Chairman Morelli. Application has been granted.
Rocco, your audio is not so good.
The audio's not good. How about now?
That's better.
Yeah, okay.
Case number 3152, application of Brian Houlihan and Michelle Sarasso of 29 Florida Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.56 front yard, for a new second floor addition, new front deck at 29 Florida Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 58, Block 104, 29, Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening. The applicants are present.
Yes, hello, James Zabka from Todd O'Connell Architects.
James.
Michelle and Brian Holohan.
Appearance again.
James, you need to spell your name and give your address again for the reporter.
Sure. James Zabka, Z-A-P-K-A, and we're from 1200 Veterans Highway, New York.
Okay, Mr. Zabka, so basically, you're here for a, just for the front yard, even though there's a second floor being added. Second floor addition doesn't trigger a height variance. What's the lot size that they are on? Are they on a 30 by 60?
They are in a 30 by 60 lot.
Okay. I would like you to just describe a deck that's being put on the front of the house, because that's what we're concerned with. What's the dimension of the deck off the front of the house?
So off the front of the house, currently there is a deck there now. I believe the deck there now is approximately 6 feet off the front of the house. It's being rebuilt with this project because it was improperly built the first time and everything is delaminating. So we're taking that opportunity to kind of bring that deck a little bit more forward. So the new deck dimension is going to be 8.5 off the house, which would be then 1.2 feet from the front property line. Realizing that it is 1.2 feet from the front property line, we are going to hold the columns that support that structure 3 feet off the property line. This isn't something that's not uncommon in the city of Long Beach, and also on that block, I do see other second-story decks that are close to the property line.
What you're asking?
I was going to say the current plans don't show the setback.
Mike, say that again.
It doesn't look like the current plans show the columns set back.
The columns are set back on the floor plan, if the dimensions, if you look at, but the columns are not shown on the site plan. So on the floor plan, you can see that the deck extends 8.5 feet, but the columns are actually 6 feet off the foundation.
Commissioner, do you see that?
Yeah, I do. I was looking at the wrong plan, actually.
Okay, all right. So since this is something that has been approved pretty routinely at this point, with footings, foot back, deck itself 1 foot back, I don't have any further questions at this time. Will any members of the board have any questions? Do we have any comments for or against Mr. Fraser?
We received a letter. We received a letter against the application. It was forwarded to the board members. It was an email.
Let's enter that that letter into the record. Who was the letter from, just for the record?
Mr. John Schmidt.
Okay. And can you just read his objection to it?
I am very concerned with the overcrowding of the proposed roof deck. The block is a one-way, and as you know, the density of the proposed roof deck will put my wife, children, and grandchildren at high risk of injury. We had our rear deck installed after the damage from Sandy. This is our safe place. Granting the proposal of a roof deck, an overcrowded area is putting my family as well as the houses around the property line in great danger to us all. They are going to have 4 decks, which I have no problem with, but to have a roof deck dangerously above with a spiral staircase is putting my family's summer family time at high risk. I am adamantly against the roof deck. I fear for the furniture being placed on the proposed roof deck, not being secured, taking it crashingly through my windows and damaging my home and injuring or possible killing us as we sleep. Furthermore, the handful of the roof decks here in the West End are in the front of the house, not the rear, and aren't as big. My next concern is the additional weight that the second story with the proposed roof deck will have on the existing foundation. I firmly believe the structural engineer needs to be called upon to validate the structure to prove what it can withstand the amount of PSI. And that's without the roof deck and the weight of 30 people dancing on the proposed roof deck. Also, the sign that was placed to notify the public is misleading. It states a roof over deck, which is the furthest from the truth. They are informing the homeowners. Who knows what else they are misleading us about? And wouldn't it be a fire response issue having a barbecue on a flat asphalt roof with the proposed outdoor stairs on the north side of the house blocking the entrance of our firefighters to extinguish a fire, and have a roof deck in the rear of the house? By the time the fire is seen, all surrounding houses will be engulfed with fire. And in conclusion, looking at the blueprints, I don't see a sprinkler system. Why?
None
All right,
of that
does anybody want to comment on this
None of that pertains to the variance. The variance is for the front.
problem? We certainly empathize with, the neighbors, complaints and concerns, but unfortunately, we're not voting on any of that. Now, let me ask you a question, counsel. Is this stuff, for example, he brings up some points about the structural, the ability to withstand the PSIs, the fire safety aspects in the sprinkler system, et cetera. Things that would have to be to code as per the code by the building department, and the building inspector will make sure that that stuff is built to code, correct?
Correct.
No obligation to overbuild or past what the code allows, or the code demands. In other words, I'm not sure if the code will demand a sprinkler system in a residential house. I'm not sure what the code will demand, but basically, he certainly has to build everything. I'm concerned about what the neighbor said, but unfortunately, it's not stuff that we are ruling on tonight. And I'm assuming that the building department will have to enforce whatever building codes are in effect for however he's going to build it, relating to the structural strength, whatever PSIs it can withstand, whatever wind speed it could withstand. But these are not, am I right, counsel? These are not things that we are voting on tonight.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's a bunch of guidelines and regulations and codes that all builders and architects must follow. They're aware of those, and they're supposed to be building structures that can withstand all those issues. But the building department will be charged with inspecting and making sure everything checks out.
Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion on this application? Do you want to wait? I'll wait to hear if anybody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant. We typically grant 1 foot off the property line decks with 3 foot back of columns. I would see no reason not to vote to grant, or to make a motion to grant.
Okay.
We'll
Anybody want a second?
I will second.
Okay.
That was Dan.
Case number 3152, application of Brian Houlihan and Michelle Cereso of 29 Florida Street, Long Beach, New York. Variance from the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5C front yard for a new second floor addition, new front deck at 29 Florida Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as section 58, block 104, lot 29, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Commissioner Creighton has introduced a motion to grant the application. Commissioner Reckner has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Grant.
Creighton?
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo? Commissioner Reckner?
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Grant.
Chairman Morelli? This application has been granted. Case number 3153, application of John Ambrose of 36 Alabama Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5B height, 9-105.5C front yard, 9-105.5B rear yard, for a new second story addition, front yard deck at 36 Alabama Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as section 59, 259, lot 10, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Okay. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
I'm unmuting them now. One moment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr.
Oh,
Curtis
good
and Ms.
evening.
Ambrose, you're both unmuted right now.
Good evening. Good evening, folks. Okay, so we see, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So we're talking about a construction on 36 Alabama that's requesting a height variance of 1.33 feet. And just tell us, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Curtis, you're going to speak first?
I'm sorry?
Who am I going to hear from, Mr. Curtis or Mr. Ambrose?
Yes, Curtis.
Okay, Mr. Curtis, please.
Sure. Howard Curtis, architect, 241 Lansdowne Avenue, Carl Place, New York, 11514.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Curtis, let's address the items on the denial letter. We've got 1.33 feet, instead of 23 feet, we've got 24.33. Tell us why the height is over a foot by a foot. Is it because of internal ceiling heights? What are we looking at?
No, the ceiling heights are 8 feet on each floor. The house is elevated approximately 4 feet at a grade. It's not a lift, so we're required to use the road as part of our height, not the freeboard elevation. So we lose, potentially what could have been 5 or 6 feet of free space. So our addition to the mid slope of our roof with the several feet at a grade, 8-foot story, some structure, 8-foot story, and then our roof pitch puts our overall height 1 foot 4 inches above the allowable height of 23 feet.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the front yard. The front yard, 10 feet and 3 feet with an open porch. You're indicating 1 foot. Now, is this a typical 1 foot deck with 2 feet footing setback that you're building? And how large is the deck?
There's an existing first story deck that was approved by a variance a couple of years ago. That deck is 1 foot back from the property line. It is 8'8" by the width of the house, roughly 20 feet. The deck above is going to stack upon that deck, 8'8" out, 1 foot from the property line, 20 feet. I noticed in the last hearing, I believe Mr. Leonetti might have been looking at this drawing because I noticed my drawing.
Yeah.
I noticed my drawing does not show the columns on the first floor plan, but it does show on the elevation drawing. The columns are out to the face of the deck. The columns are 1 foot because I have a pre-existing entry stair on the side. I could push the columns back slightly, but I cannot get them back to 3 feet. Best that I could get is probably 30 inches, but I realize I didn't show them and that's my fault. They're shown at 1 foot. If I had to make a concession or if the board was willing to accept, I could make them 30 inches and not have to rebuild that entry stair. The deck is relatively new and I'd like to not have to take the lower level too much to support the upper level. If I had to have them at 3 feet, I'd have to rebuild these stairs and rebuild probably a third of the north side of the deck.
Mostly when we are requiring those columns from 3 feet back, the deck is higher and people walk under the
Can't hear you.
walk under the front edge of the deck. In this case, the ground floor deck is on about 3 feet, so nobody's going to be walking under it. I don't really have an issue with the columns being at the front in this case.
That's correct. It has a solid skirt too. The lower deck has a solid vertical skirt board on it. But again, it's only 4 feet above grade.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
My question? Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I made a statement.
Okay. Does anybody else have any further questions?
Nope.
Okay, so let's continue. Now we're talking about the rear yard, and we go to the rear yard that you're proposing 1.5 feet. Tell us why that is 1.5 feet.
Actually, the existing house has a 1.5 foot rear yard. Our addition is stepped in 5.5 feet. So it's stepped 4 feet from the first floor. The second floor is stepped in 4 feet from the first floor to maintain 5.5 feet, which is typically the PSE requirement for the wire clearance. So we brought our addition in more than the allowable 4 feet, or more than the allowable of 4 feet to 5.5 feet to also meet the LIPA clearance, the PSEG clearance
So
requirement.
I wanna just summarize this then by saying that the 1.5 foot that the variance letter or the denial letter refers to is a pre-existing condition. Am I correct?
That's right. Pre-existing.
That's a pre-existing condition.
Okay.
That is
All
a
right.
pre-existing
So
condition.
at this point, do any of the members of the board have any questions?
No questions here.
Questions? All right. Is there anybody, Mr. Frazier, that wanted to speak for or against the application?
We didn't receive any correspondence on this, either for or against.
All right. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion on this case? I'll move to grant.
I'll second.
Who second? Mike?
Yeah, yes.
Case number 3153, application of John Ambrose of 36 Alabama Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5B height, 9-105.5C front yard, 9-105.5E rear yard, for a new second-story addition, front yard deck at 36 Alabama Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 259, Lot 10, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. I'm going to put the motion to grant the application. Commissioner Leonetti has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton,
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton,
Grant,
Commissioner Acevedo,
Grant.
Commissioner Reckner, Commissioner Brooks,
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Grant.
Chairman Morelli.
Grant.
This application has been granted.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Thank you. Go ahead.
Number 3154, application of James and Mary Mangles of 517 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-106.15, harboring poultry to install a chicken coop and maintain live poultry at 517 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 26, Lot 167, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Okay, Mr. Frazier, can we have the applicants, please?
Okay, Mr. Mangles, you're unmuted.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mangles. How are you? Okay, so can you please tell us a little bit about your application? Give us your name and address first, please, for the record.
It's James Mangles, M-A-N-G-E-L-S, 517 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Mangles, why don't you just tell us about your case, please?
I just want to. I think they're pretty beneficial to have around the house.
Sorry, I can't hear Rocco.
Get some fresh eggs every day. You know, it's good for the kids to, I guess, instead of a hamster or something. They're pretty fascinating birds, if you've ever gotten the chance to know one instead of eating it. You know, I'd like to get three hens.
Mr. Mangles, have you ever had chickens before? Have you ever kept them
I've owned two horses.
at the home before?
I've owned two horses. I've had chickens most of my life growing up in Bay Shore and also in Brooklyn. And I have no problems at all handling them.
Okay. Now, my question is, would you have a rooster also, or no?
Negative.
Okay.
Two.
Tell me about the situation of you know, concerns that the neighbors have, because I think we need to, you know, address that. I mean, I know people may not be as well versed, you know, in aviary science, you know, and the thing is that there are concerns about, since you seem to have a nice sized lot, but you know, we're kind of in close quarters, and people are concerned of vermin, and people are concerned of predators. You know, people are concerned of raccoons. Because I do know people out in Suffolk that have chickens, but they always have a problem, you know, with raccoons and so forth coming into the yard and trying to get into the coops and stuff. So, how do you propose to work around that?
As far as protecting the hens, that would be on me. The chicken wire and digging down into the dirt enough so that the raccoon or whatever animal was trying to access the coop wouldn't be able to. As far as the concern for Berman and the neighbors, chickens happen to be phenomenal mouse hunters, probably better than a feral cat. And they're a regular pet in lots, probably a quarter, if not smaller, like in Brooklyn, some of the town of Hempstead, most of the town of Hempstead has it. East Rockaway, small lots, 20 by 40s. They have chickens. You know, you keep it clean. You maintain your animal. I've had worse problems with my neighbors when I lived in the state streets with dogs. I mean, I've had numerous calls into the city about defecating and urinating that the dogs did, you know, so I think that's,
What kind of a situation, you know, have you spoken to your neighbors, or have you had any kind of correspondence or conversations with them regarding, you know, their concerns with the situation? Because I know that we received a fair amount of letters in opposition. I don't think we got any that were in favor. So that's why I'm just trying to balance this and address everybody's concerns. I understand that, you know, you sound like you know what you're doing and you've done this before. How large would the what would the structures be?
coop for 3 birds is roughly 3 by 3, roughly 9 cubic feet.
And 3 cubic feet per bird is the requirement.
Okay. Now, would that be in that side yard area that you have, or would it be behind the house?
No, that would be on the side yard that also abuts my neighbor's extra lot. So there would be a huge amount of space between properties if you had to measure it. I think my extra side lot's like over 25 feet, and theirs is easily over 25 feet. So.
Okay. Do members of the board have?
I mean, I'd be willing to address any of the letters if I could answer the concerns, if that helps. I could do that.
Okay, fine. First of all, do any members of the board have any questions? And then we'll move on to if Mr. Frazier has got anybody who wants to speak for or against, we'll have them up, and then perhaps Mr. Mengels can answer their concerns. Anyone else? No.
Okay. I do have some questions. I'm thinking here while I'm at it.
Okay.
Can you tell us something about, since you've owned chickens before, how do you deal with like when they get sick or when they pass away? I'm assuming they never have fertile eggs because you won't have a rooster. So can you just talk about all of that? Because this is very new to Long Beach. I don't think anybody in Long Beach has chickens. You're number one. You're the first person asking, and to the best of my knowledge. So we'd like to know more about it anyway. Please,
to do it the right way.
What's that?
I wanted to do it the right way, so not start off the wrong way.
But maintenance of the birds, like what's their lifespan? Where do they get sick? Do they do you need to call vets in? I mean, how do you have a vet that takes birds in town? I mean, how does this work?
You'd have to go to a specialist veterinarian. I work with there's a place in Massapequa, Bobby Horvat. He's Friends of Wilderness. We do a lot of wild rescue animals. So finding an uncommon doctor for a chicken isn't all that difficult, and their lifespan's like a typical pet, I guess, around 7 years, and you dispose of it as a pet. It's not gonna go in a paper bag in the garbage can. You know, they become part of the family if you take care of the animals correctly.
Okay, that's it.
Mr. Alton, does that answer your question?
That answers my question. Yes, thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Frazier, now, if you have people that would like to speak for or against, you want to put them, we'll ask anybody that's in favor first, if you could cue them up.
We have, Rocco, there's No one's speaking, but we received letters. If you want, I can read them individually, and that way Mr. Mangles can.
Read them, yeah, please. You know what? Why don't we do this? I think this would behoove us to do because of the format that we're working with. Can you just read them quickly into the record? And then after you've read this, I know there's about 3 or 4 of them.
There's 9.
No, there's 7.
There's more than that, but, however,
Okay.
I will say a lot of the letters are very redundant with their concerns. So why don't you just read one? I think that they're all the same concerns.
All right. All right.
I agree.
I'll read the first one.
And Rocco, can I just ask before you do that?
Yes.
Rocco, this is Dan. Can I just ask a question
Dan,
just
I can-
before
I
you
know.
do that?
Sure, go
Okay,
ahead.
can he, I just want to confirm that you're going to have no roosters and no more than 3 hens?
That is
that
correct.
true?
That is correct.
Okay, that was really, Rocco, that was the only question I had. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Just a recommendation prior to reading them off real quick. If you'd like, Commissioner, you can have them all incorporated by reference if it helps for the record.
Well, you know what we'll do? I have a funny feeling that perhaps Mr. Mangles, is aware of what they're complaining about, or he's seen maybe the letters. But just so we have one read into the record that he can answer specifically now, Ms. Lynch, why don't you just pick one that you feel has salient points in it that are redundant in the others, and just maybe read the body of the letter so that Mr. Mangles just has an opportunity to respond to that. Okay?
Okay.
Since this is a first and a unique situation for Long Beach, I want to make sure that we're being fair to everyone. Go ahead.
After doing extensive research on the pros and cons of raising backyard chickens, I am strongly against the approval of this application. The reasons for this are listed below. Noise. Both hens and roosters are very noisy. Roosters crow at all hours of the day and night. Hens tend to be very verbal when laying eggs and interacting as a flock. Our homes are way too close together not to be impacted by this. Smell. Chicken droppings are very smelly. Owners must clean the coop every day and dispose of the waste properly. It has to be either buried or hauled away immediately. Intend to use the waste as compost. First, it has to be aged and dried out in the sun. The smell will be horrific. How can we be certain that this waste will be disposed of properly? Rodents. Chicken coops and chicken feed attract mice and rats. Conflicts with wildlife. Many predators will be attracted to the coop, both for the chickens themselves and for their eggs. This will include birds of prey, raccoons, cats, and snakes. Will our small pets now be at risk also? Dust. Chickens create a lot of dust by scratching around the coop. This dust is dangerous to the lungs of both the humans and chickens. Again, the coop must be cleaned on a daily basis. We have no way of knowing if this is in fact will be done. Our son has respiratory issues since he was a young child. We don't need something like this to exacerbate that issue. Disease, namely salmonella and the avian flu. Backyard birds are associated with hundreds of multi-state salmonella outbreaks every year. A 2016 USDA study of backyard poultry owners found that 25% of them did not wash their hands after handling the birds or the eggs. The same study showed that the majority of backyard owners know little about identifying or preventing poultry disease. Again, the coop needs to be cleaned properly every day, taking precautions not to touch or spread the waste unknowingly. This is particularly worrisome when living in such a densely populated area such as Long Beach. The density of the city has certainly contributed to the number of COVID-19 cases in Long Beach. We do not need a salmonella outbreak as well. I would also like to point out that several houses adjacent to this property are occupied by renters with absentee landlords. You may not receive letters from these properties due to the fact that the homeowners are not there to be directly impacted. I strongly urge you not to approve this variance. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you for reading that into the record. So, Mr. Mangles, want to respond to this, please, sir? Mr. Frazier, you want to give Mr. Mangles the floor?
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead, sir.
I'm not trying to do this to disrupt or ruin anybody's life. That's not the intent here. People are, that adamant about it, and they have these supposed grave concerns, which I think are a little overhyped. I would probably just pass on it just to keep good neighbor stuff going. But I'll address a couple of the points they brought up real quick, and you guys do what you feel is right. As far as the feces and manure, again, I'll go back to the experiences I had living in the state streets. Had renters on the left of me, renters on the right. I'm a homeowner. I had to deal with, you couldn't even imagine the pile of dog duty and the stench. I couldn't open my windows. I had to go through that for several years. The city never did anything about that after many calls to the animal department. But that was my experience. So it's just about how clean a neighbor wants to be, how respectful. It doesn't matter if it's a chicken, a dog, whatever other pet you have. People have Amazon parrots. You can see them parading up and down the street once in a while if you ever get the opportunity. So it's the same thing. They all go to the bathroom. It's how the owners take care of them. As far as noise, there's no roosters. The chickens are a little bit loud. When they do lay an egg, they cackle. But again, if you want to compare it to the plethora of dogs that we have in the neighborhood, I don't think it's any worse or any worse. Landscapers, every morning, or at least twice, 3 times a week, 7:59, they're cranking up their leaf blowers and their 4-cylinder lawnmowers. Noise is noise. We live on the main street. It's not the Hamptons or whatever. Density, the houses being too close. Again, I think I have a little bit of a unique situation compared to most of the plots, having a double extra lot and quite a deep lot. I face a main street, so it's really as far away as it possibly could. And then if you want to compare that to the 5 boroughs, you're talking about properties that are 25% the size, and they allow it, and there's not a salmonella outbreak in Brooklyn. So that's all I got. Again, I don't want to stress out my neighbors if they feel that.
You know what, Mr. Engels, thanks very much. I mean, you sound like a very considerate person. I mean, the fact that you would even say that, you'd withdraw your application if it was going to create a problem speaks volumes of your character, really.
Rocco, I had one other question nobody brought up. Will they always be in the pen, or is like usually you see chickens walking around and stuff like that? What's your intent?
I have an area that I would build out. It would be like a run. It's like 4 foot by 6 foot that goes in front of the coop so that they can stretch out in the day and then go in at night.
Okay, but that would be the total extent of their freedom now. Okay.
What about in the winter? What do you have to do for the winter time?
They overwinter. They huddle up together, and, unless it's like 15 below, then you got to put a little heat lamp or something.
Okay. You don't have to bring them into the house at any point for any reason, right? Okay.
How often do they lay eggs?
If they're good, they're probably good for 1 a day.
Yeah.
Neighbors will benefit having fresh eggs because I can't possibly eat that many either.
I had eggs. I had chickens once. It was an egg every day and a half was the number I remember.
That's approximate.
Okay. All right.
Just as a side note, I'd like to say that verbally, I have spoken to a couple of my immediate neighbors, and they were very excited about it, and they were okay with it. I do understand.
Oh, really?
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. All right. Does anybody want to make a motion on this, or do you want to table this? People want to think about it.
The applicant, maybe want to get some correspondence from the people who said they were in favor of it, because
I think I would recommend doing that and holding over. Yeah.
All right, that's fair enough. Yes. So, Mr. Mengels, you heard what the commissioner said. He said if you have a couple of these people, if maybe they could submit letters in favor of it, we'll hold it open until voting, because all we got was a lot of negativity, and to be fair to you, we would give you the opportunity, if there was anyone in favor, as you said, if they wanted to submit a letter in favor, we'll entertain it. The letter could be submitted before the next meeting. The record stays open until voting. We vote a month from now on the last Thursday of next month. So,
Would it be all right if I collected them and submitted them with Robin?
Yes.
yes, of course, yeah.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I appreciate that.
All right, sir. All right, so the case will remain, we'll keep the case open. The case will remain open until voting. Thank you. Have a good evening. Next.
Thank you.
Case number 3155, application of Mary Louise Chase of 33 Louisiana Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5B height, 9-105.5C front yard, 9-105.5B side yard, for construction of a new 3-story FEMA compliant house at 27 Maryland Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as section 58, block 109, lot 30 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
David, can you put the applicants up?
I have Mr. Bella on. Mr. Bella, you're unmuted.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
God bless.
So,
Muted.
good evening, members of the board. George Bella from GWB Architect, 120 West Park Avenue, Suite 304, Long Beach, New York, 11561. I'm here tonight as the architect for Rick and Mary Lou Chase, who are the owners of 27 Maryland Avenue in Long Beach, New York. And we're seeking variances for height, front yard, side yard for a new 3-level, 2-story FEMA compliant residence.
Okay. Mr. Bella, let's go through the letter. And I just have a quick question before I start going through the denial letter. The photograph that's included in the packet, where there's a car kind of in front of it, that's the home at present, am I correct?
That's the home as it is today, yes.
Yeah, it has that, the garage is kind of extending outward in front of the home.
That's correct.
Okay. So obviously that home is coming down because you're going to build a new 3-story FEMA compliant house. Now, let's address the items of the code. 9105.5 height. You're going 2 3/4 feet above the height allowance because of the FEMA compliance, or because of the height of the floors, the ceiling?
It's for the height of our ground floor. So one of the things that that we're proposing for this garage level is a hobby of Rick's, a labor of love, is he works on automobiles. It's not, and so what he has right now where he lives at 33 Louisiana, he's got a tall ground floor level. The house was elevated a few years ago. It's just a 1-story house, so it never needed any variances or any special permission in order to do that. But now they're going to move on over to Maryland Avenue, and he'd like to have a similar setup where he could have the tall garage. He'd like to have a car lift in that to be able to work on it comfortably. I want to be very clear that it's not for the purpose of a commercial business. It's not a money-making enterprise. It's just simply a hobby. And while he does help out neighbors if they have problems with their cars, and it's a neighborly thing, it's not for profit. So the additional height that we're asking for on that ground floor is really just a product of his wanting what he does have over on Louisiana to engage in his hobby.
Okay. So at this point now, let's take a little tour through the house itself. So we'll talk about the height. We'll talk about the front yard first. The front yard now, you're proposing 1 foot the open porch. So I'm assuming, Mr. Bella, that the 1 foot is going to be the typical, with the footings 2 feet behind the end of the deck, meaning that the footings are 3 feet from the property line. Am I correct with that?
That's correct. That's in alignment with what we've asked many times.
What's the dimension of the deck? Do you know how far it protrudes from the front of the house?
Yep, it's 9 foot deep and it's 22 feet wide.
Okay.
And it stops within 1 foot. The deck itself stops within 1 foot of the front property line. The column supporting that deck would be 3 foot behind the property line.
Okay. And that's reflected in the drawings. All right, so the third item is the side yard. Let's talk about the 1 foot on the north side. Is that because of the stair and landing?
Yeah, so one of the things that the Chases have at their house on 33 Louisiana, when we had elevated that home a few years ago, they had a pre-existing nonconformity on the side of their house. On that side, it was the north side. This, it's the north side. And what they found in living there over the past few years is that the deck has really become very useful for them in that they're able to barbecue out there. They're able to bring the trash directly from, kitchen down to garbage cans. They have access to their utility room without, if they're not home and a service technician comes to work on a boiler or something like that, they don't need to be home. They have an exterior door that they could go up those stairs. So it's really very convenient for them. They'd like to recreate that that deck over here, where we're proposing once again, to put it within 1 foot of the north property line, which is in alignment with what we have done on other projects where we, have a set of stairs that go up to a front deck. In those applications, we've asked for that in, closer to the front yard. This is more on the side yard.
All right, so that deck, yeah, is certainly in the, let's say, posterior half of the house. And so, the stairs, extensive set of stairs, it looks like, going up to it. So the one deck that they have will allow access from 2 doors. Can you just tell me what those 2 doors are one more time, please?
Sure. As you ascend the stairs, you go up a few stairs, you'll hit a landing, then you go up a few more, a total of 20 steps. You'll travel west, and then the first door that's on your left will be a door that leads into their kitchen. And then if you go past that and go a little further to the back of the house, that's a door that would access their utility room. And again, that's a very similar arrangement to what they have.
Okay, so that's not it's not, other than a utility room, it isn't any kind of entrance way into the rest of the house anywhere else?
No, absolutely not.
All right. So I understand what that's about. Do any members of the board, and this is on what, a 30 by 60, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Bella.
Rocco,
Have any questions?
I see a couple of spots here. I mean, up on the second floor, you're 9 foot 2 inches to the eaves, whereas, a normal ceiling height, and then it's open. A normal ceiling height would be closer to 8 feet. So, it's like having an extra 1 foot 2 up there. And I don't know what to say about the 12 foot high on the ground floor. I don't know how much you need to make a garage that you can work in.
Okay, so let me.
Yeah, I mean, is he planning on, Mr. Bella, let me ask you, is he planning on putting any kind of lift system in that garage? Like
Yes, yeah.
some people have car over the other?
Yes, that's the reason for us wanting to go as high as we have. I'd like to get back to Commissioner Leonetti's pointing out the 9 foot 2 plate height on the second floor. So just to clarify that, what we did, if you look at the roof plan, we knew that we were asking for a lot of height. So basically what we did do is we lowered the plate height on the second floor to 7 foot, which is below standard. But because these are bedrooms and staircases and family room spaces there, we kind of lifted a lot of areas for dormers. So that 9 foot 2 is what you're seeing on those particular dimensions. Really, the main plate of the house is at 7 foot, and we had done that. So I noticed that there was a discrepancy between my measurements and what was on the denial letter. I had a total height, a height by definition as 24 foot 5 3/4. I just noticed today that the denial letter said 25 foot 5 3/4. I put a call into the building department to clarify if that was just a typo or if they were interpreting something differently than what I was interpreting it. But they hadn't got back to me prior to this meeting. So I guess that's just, I'm explaining that because I do want you to understand that up on the second floor, we did lower the plate height in much of the area, and we did a series of dormers in order to give them the space that they would want, but to lower the height by definition. And quite honestly, I think that when you look at the front, it appears as a lower house than what it would if obviously the whole house were at that plate height that we show with the 9'2" dimension.
So Leonardo,
So,
does that answer your question?
Well, the dormer part of it does mitigate it somewhat, and if you look at the slope where the eaves are lower, that would be where the peak would be anyway. All right, so I take back any objection to the 9 foot upstairs.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments?
I do, Rocco. So I've made my comments before about new houses and not meeting the codes. I have a little bit of a problem with that. But my bigger problem in this situation is that they're 2 foot 5 3/4, whatever, over on height. But in order to put in an 11-foot plus ceiling in the ground floor. Now, we've made previous applicants reduce the height of their building by reducing the floor height of their ground floor. Now, he could reduce it to 9-foot ceilings in the garage and still be under the, under what the requirement is for a variance. So I am not comfortable with giving a variance based on a hobby. We should be, looking at this as, it's a new house they could build to the code. He could still utilize his garage at 9 feet ceilings. I don't see why we would give a variance on height and it could be built to the code in this situation.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? George, can I ask a question? I don't know, it's allowed by code in Long Beach. Would you allow reduce the garage height to an 8 or 9 feet and then put a pit in the middle where he could stand down and work in it?
No, because we're in a flood zone, we're technically not allowed to excavate below grade. That would make us non-FEMA compliant.
Okay, just had to ask. Thanks.
Anybody else? Well, Mr. Creighton makes a good point as well. Mr. Frazier, do you have anybody that wants to come on the microphone and speak for or against?
We didn't receive any letters either for or against.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion on the application, or do you want to think about it? Personally, I'd like to think about it.
All right, but while we think about it, I mean, he could do 10 feet and still, and then come down to the right height. Also pending, I'd like to get the building department to confirm whether he's 2.5 feet over or 1.5 feet over. So I think we should put it off and make that decision. And, as long as he gets down to the code height, lower the ground floor that much. It doesn't have to go to 9 feet. It could be 10 feet or even 11, depending on what the actual overage is.
I sort of agree with that. Yeah.
I feel more comfortable with that because, again, as Mr. Creighton brought up, good point, George. It is based on a hobby, and while I am a car buff and I well understand why the guy would want to, do this. We do have to think of consideration for the local neighborhood. And the thing is, if there is a way that the height could be reduced and brought down to, closer to the code or to the code, it certainly behooves the board to want to achieve that end. So I myself would like to think about it, consider it, maybe talk to your client. Perhaps you want to amend the plan or send us a letter if your client is willing to have a vote on a 10-foot, as Commissioner said, and the case will remain open as usual till voting.
Could I just add something? So prior to the meeting, that Chase and I have discussed, the need maybe for some flexibility when we present this to the board. So 2 things that we did come up with were that main part of the roof where we have a 6-on-12 pitch, we could reduce that to a 5-on-12 pitch. In addition to that, Rick and I had kind of gone over car dimensions and what he would need based on dimensions of a car, ceiling height, things like that. And we came up with really 11 foot, reduces the overall height of the building between roof pitch and reducing the ground floor level. We could take 1.5 feet off of this house, and still, I think that would work for the Chases. Anything beyond that, then we're really asking him to, to change the way he's going to go about this. So I don't know if that helps. That they are flexible. They'd like to,
right.
They want to make everybody happy, and
also I'll put it to the board. All right, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Bella. So I'll put it to the board if anybody does want to make a motion with those kind of conditions, or if everyone would still feel more comfortable, waiting, and maybe Mr. Bella could put that in writing if we wait, just so that we have it when we vote on it. What do you folks want to do? Do you want to hold this off, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I think we should wait until we confirm whether it's 1.5 feet or 2.5 feet that it's over.
That's fine. I'm comfortable with that myself. Mr. Bella, I think we'll wait on this, and if you want to put those two changes that we just discussed in writing, submit it to Robin before the next vote, or as well as anything else that the Chases would want to see, maybe agree to change for, let's do that rather than have a vote on it tonight. So the case is going to remain open until voting.
Okay. So, and just to be clear, I'll speak with the building department. I'll get a determination on that discrepancy in their denial letter, and then I'll follow up with you. And yep. If they interpret it the same way I interpret it, then basically we're taking the height portion of this away from our application. If they don't, then we would be asking for as much as 1 foot of relief.
1 foot. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Bell.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good one.
Number 3156, application of 135 Park Avenue LLC of 143 East Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.15A use, 9-105.15B front yard, 9-105.15C rear yard, 9-105.15E height, 9-105.15H off-street parking, 9-106.2 mixed uses prohibited for construction of a new mixed-use occupancy building for both residential and commercial purposes at 135 East Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 109, lots 15 through 19 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Okay, good evening. Mr. Kelly is going to come up and represent his client, or the client's coming up first?
I'm coming up first. Can you hear me?
Yep. Mr. Kelly, you can come up, please.
Kelly, I'm going to move you up to panelist, and then I'll allow you to present.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, you are...
See that, I am a panelist now.
Yes, you are a panelist.
Okay, I'm going to do the best I can. The reason why I asked to be a panelist is because I have some documents to share with you, and I'm hoping to be able to share them on the screen. My name is Dennis Kelly. I'm an attorney at 120 West Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, 11561. And I represent 135 East Park Ave LLC, who owns the property at 135 East Park Avenue. I have with me this evening the architect Joe Gallinaro and my client Darren Gallo as well, participating in the hearing. I have a few remarks to make, as well as to present to you some photographs and a document that I'll refer to as well. You may remember that that 135 East Park Avenue used to be the old Citibank prior to it moving just west to where the Citibank is located now. So it's that vacant block of a building that's been vacant for quite a number of years. My client is seeking variances to build a 4-story mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor and 3 floors of 1-bedroom apartments, 8 on each floor, for a total of 24 units. This evening, I have architect Joe Gallinaro, who will testify in a couple of minutes to go through the plans in detail. and he'll be doing that on screen with you. In order to build this beautifully rendered and well-placed building, we will need variances for a change of use, allowing the residential and the commercially zoned A district. We'll need a variance for a front yard setback, a rear yard setback, height, off-street parking, and mixed uses. It's our position that my client will not get a reasonable return on the retail alone, especially given the present impacts of the pandemic and the likelihood of the impacts persisting into the immediate future and quite possibly ultimately changing the storefront retail business forever. The hardship of this particular property is unique by virtue of its now persistent vacancy, which is probably a result of the consolidation of the retail market overall, as you probably have become aware of. The essential character of the neighborhood will not change in the A district, which runs between Lafayette and Monroe Boulevards. I'll show you right now, if I do this correctly, some photographs of buildings. If I can just get them up on the screen, bear with me.
Are you seeing your option to share?
I did, I pulled it up. Let me just cancel this.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. There it is. Share.
No, it's not showing. Hold on, let me drag the presenter ball to you. Hold on one second.
Try again.
Now, try it now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We're going to go with screen. And then I'll pull this. We'll pull up. There's one. Can you see that photo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, we can see your whole desktop.
There we go. So that's 185 West Park Avenue, as you probably well know. I think it's otherwise known as Park Place Condominiums. That's one building in Business A. Here comes another one. This is one in which you've passed variances recently. This is 249 East Park Avenue, which once was the Central Federal Savings Building and then a Long Beach Medical Center office. It's now going to be completely residential as far as my review indicated. Let's see about this one. Oh, this is the Summit, which is at 235 West Park Avenue. Another one in Residence A. This would be the now historic Granada Towers, which is just across the street from 135 East Park Avenue. And let's see if I can get the last one here. And that is 225 West Park Avenue, which is a Long Beach Housing Authority building. So it's not uncommon. Let's see if I can get myself back.
My question, Mr. Kelly, would be that just as a general statement, before we go forward on that, is that even though the district goes from Monroe to Lafayette, I believe, the blocks themselves have individual characters. And I mean, the issue that I see is the fact that, for example, 249 East Park, that building had a big demand on, the parking, et cetera, when it was part of Long Beach Hospital and it was a commercial building when it was Central Federal Savings. And really, in that particular case, the new building that's being built down now, or the conversion, I should say, really is a downward usage of what the building used to be. And, the other building, I think it's 185. 185 was a school at one time. And, that had its own demand of, let's say, parking, and it had, buses, and it had all kinds of things that existed, and probably what's there now demands less. The Summit, has a substantial amount of parking underneath it. I don't know exactly what the ratio is of their spots, but the thing is, that particular block, as you know, is not as busy a block as the block that the movie theater is on, and et cetera. So I don't know, and let's talk about Granada. Granada, how old is that building? 75, 80 years old, probably. And certainly conditions were a lot different on Park Avenue. But this proposal is a little different because this proposal is a new construction, and it's a new construction on top of what, is there now, which is just a small retail space area. And I understand your concerns, that the client would not be able to get a significant return, because I do agree with you that the retail market is, slower and receive rents these days and maybe for the next foreseeable future. But the question I would want you to at least, try to explain to me, myself and the board, is how this is a financial hardship by, let's say, putting 3 levels on it, by not putting 3 levels on it versus putting 2 levels on it or putting 1 level on it. I'm hoping that either you or yourself or Mr. Gallinaro is going to go through the parking that's going to be offered with this facility and how it's going to work out in terms of the ratio, because I think that's where you're going to see probably the biggest concern from the board is going to be the impact on the parking on an already busy block. So if you want to go ahead with that in mind, maybe we can zero in on what I think will be concerns of the board. Okay, Mr. Kelly's on. Mr. Fraser, Mr. Kelly's on or no?
Is he, Mr. Kelly, you muted yourself?
Yep, he did.
Yep, there you go.
That wouldn't be the first time I muted myself. Thank you. So, Chairman Morelli, I just was saying, or I thought I was saying, I will be brief. I want to make a couple more comments, and then Mr. Gallinaro will bring up the plans and talk about the ratio. When I say we, I'm talking about myself, but more importantly, my client and Mr. Gallinaro are willing to get creative in order to discuss how to deal with the parking, in order to provide enough residential units to make the project worthwhile. Mr. Gallo at this point is prepared to pay up to $5 million, as an investment in the property to build what's being proposed now. So one of the things I wanted to say relative to the parking, it's our position that where this is being built and for whom we assume it's being built for is not going to demand necessarily as much parking as in the past. So when coming up with the plan, Mr. Gallo, in speaking with Mr. Gallinaro and myself, we referred to the comprehensive plan update of 2018, the draft. And we're seeking to build in the central business district, providing a mixed use. As it states on page 4-7 of the comprehensive plan, the city has many pre-existing mixed-use structures, particularly within the CBD, which is the central business district. Later on, the comprehensive plan at page 412 actually encourages, there's a recognition for the need for additional entry-level affordable housing to attract and retain younger workers, as well as housing for empty nesters that want to remain in Long Beach but no longer needed larger homes. It also makes a statement on the same page in the lower part of its economic outlook paragraph that retail gaps showed that local stores are not fully capturing local household expenditures in the retail category, and it goes on to state that it's significantly less than our retail power within the city, meaning the residents and the population of the city. We spend significantly less than we have. Having said all that, what's being proposed is providing that mixed use property with residential and commercial, so one can support the other and create a building which would take advantage of its centrality, meaning near the transportation. That would be the railroad, obviously, the buses, the M15, and most importantly, centrality as to those local amenities, be it gyms, the post office, the Stop and Shop, Gentle Brew, and I can go on and on. You all know the neighborhood very well. We would estimate that 75% of the tenants in this building wouldn't even have cars. We're expecting to attract millennials who would take advantage of the central business district with a lovely one-bedroom apartment at what I use the term affordable, but I'm using it in the sense of a reasonable rent at a fair market reasonable rent. And I'll just anecdotally, without wasting the board's time, I have 3 of my 4 children, adult children, all college graduates, thank God, all with good jobs, live in New York City. This pandemic has caused them to totally reevaluate the fact that they live in New York City. And they are preparing now, as I speak, to figure out how to move out. And I'm not necessarily talking about moving back to this house, about finding reasonable, affordable, workable housing for themselves. And something like this is going to fit in that niche extremely well. With that, I will give you Mr. Gallinaro so he can discuss the plans and we can discuss parking even further. So, Joe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Gallinaro.
Thank you.
Okay, so go forward with your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you.
One moment. Let me move you up to panelist. And I'm going to move the presenter ball from you, Mr. Kelly, to Mr. Gallinaro. Hey, Mr. Gallinaro, you have the ball. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. Joseph Gallinaro. Good evening. 185 Lagoon Drive East, Lido Beach, New York, 11561. Hopefully, can everyone see my screen at this point?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So what we've okay, great. What we put together here is a use map of the area, just to help to illustrate what Mr. Kelly had started discussing, which is, and hopefully you could see my cursor circling the site of 135 East Park Avenue. As Mr. Kelly had mentioned, the building's location to public transportation with the train station and the bus depot right behind it, as well as obviously nowadays we have services like Uber or taxis could service the building. The occupants of the building are very well located in order to get to the supermarkets right up the block, the post office, the bank, the movie theater, this whole strip on heading north on Long Beach Road with beverages, auto if they needed, markets, food. This is the pharmacy. There's gyms. Right here is the building, which is the 249 East Park, the change of use building that Mr. Kelly had mentioned. Here is the Granada right across the street. This key map here on the right is color coded so that we show in blue public transportation, gray roads. This hatched area is the parking lots, the public parking lots, which is on East Park. There's also up Edwards Riverside and Long Beach Road. There's also the parking lot that's behind the train station bus depot, which is used for commuters, which is pretty quiet during the off hours. There's also religious institutions all within walking distance. There's the parks, which are nearby. We have parks all up on the north side, NLK Center, the rec center with the dog run and access to the water with the boat launch. The tennis is right here. Bridgeworks is over here. And of course, our beach is down here. This dashed line here, this circle, represents a quarter-mile radius circle around the center of the building, which is, and when doing planning and city planning, sort of a rule of thumb where a quarter mile is determining the comfortable walking distance that one could expect when designing for a person to travel to or from. So if you see within this circle, all of these items, all of these amenities that the city has to offer for the building. Just outside of that, obviously, you have the boardwalk and City Hall. There's the library is right here. You mentioned the rec center and so on.
I mean,
So
it's a very appealing design if we are going after a New York City or a Brooklyn Heights, model. But the fact is that it's still a suburban town. And I don't know. I mean, personally, I think that even though millennials will ride up, their bikes and get around, they still have cars. My concern is where are they going to park? I mean, I at least half to 2/3 of the residents would own a car. So I mean, we got to kind of deal with that. And again, a 1-bedroom apartment is great, but their friends are going to come over with a car. So I just want to more specifically hone in on that because I understand. I mean, it's a very appealing, scenario to have this. If this was downtown Brooklyn, but the thing is that since it is a suburban town, I do worry about the parking and the congestion because I don't want to see this turn into, Brooklyn or the areas in Queens that are very Long Island City that are very close to the city. They're very desirable areas. They've gotten really expensive, and I hear what Mr. Kelly was saying about how millennials want to move out of the city, work from home, work remotely, like we're doing right now. We know that that's going to be the model for a lot of future businesses. But the thing is that we still need to specifically talk about the number of units and what the parking is going to be provided for it. So, because I'm sure that, again, the commissioners are concerned about that.
Sure. Yeah. So to that end, what we have here is the zoning and the parking spaces required that we're showing. Here we have our calculations for the parking per section 9-112, where there would be 3 floors of 8 units, 24 1-bedrooms, where there would be 36 parking spaces required. We have the commercial storage and total the retail square footage is the 4,852 square feet. The rest of the ground floor, which I'll show in a larger plan in a second, is for storage and entry, exit, lobby spaces, staircases, elevators, and so on. And then we have here at the bottom, the total required space would be 47 spaces, where the breakout is 36 for the residential and 11 for the commercial. And we are able to, in the rear of the building, provide 10 spaces at the moment. So we are roughly slightly more than 20%. Sorry, go ahead.
Talk about that. Let's talk about that for a minute now. So let's be on an optimistic side, Mr. Gallinaro. Let's just say that the 11 spaces that you're looking for the retail portion of the building are something we can't do anything about. So we're not even going to, in my own head, in my own calculations, I'm not even going to count those spaces. So let's say that any storefront that's there is front that's there, unless the type of business would be dramatically different than what was existing. Let's suffice it to say that I shut my mouth. Let's suffice it to say that the 11 spots that are there are a given that we're not going to really count. So let's zoom in on the residential, which is something new that we don't have yet, and so we're talking about 36. What did you say? 47 in total. So that was 36 for the residential, and you're proposing 10 spots. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So basically, 1 spot per 3 apartments, or actually 3.6 apartments, is what you're proposing. Now, do any members of the board have want to talk about this? Because I'm sure that this is where people's concern is going to lie. I mean, it's a beautiful looking building. The concept that Mr. Kelly presented works nicely. I mean, but again, I think the meat of the matter right now is going to be the parking. So, it is on a congested block. Again, this isn't the block between Magnolia and Laurelton where, 235 sits, where it's a big building, it's got parking, and certainly a building like Granada that doesn't have any parking has been there for 75, 80 years. So let's talk about this unique situation as I see it, because this is a new construction. As you know, there's a lot more latitude with new constructions in terms of complying closer to the code than there is with stuff that's either being renovated like 249 East Park, renovated from an old school like 185 West Park. So let's talk about the number of units relative to the parking, okay?
Sure. So the first thing is unless I misheard you, there are 24 units with 10 spots. So we're one spot per 2.4 units.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we're roughly 27% of what required parking would be for the units. There's a difficulty in providing parking, for any building really that's tight like this. I have right now the ground floor plan open. So the thing with parking and putting parking under buildings, and we've all been through a drive, parking under a building has a very specific column grid or spacing of superstructure that is not really relatable to apartment layout structures. So the column spacing has to be much larger when you're driving cars around it than when you're moving people within it. So there is a challenge to get parking, let's say, under the building without, doing heavy duty structural load transfers from up above to put down, onto the building itself, and to circulate through or around a building with cars would obliterate a lot of the retail.
Okay, but let me ask you this. I mean, this is just a question I'm throwing out there. Let's just say that the client is really firm on wanting 3 levels of residential space. Okay, we have the argument that commercial space is weak. The demand for commercial space is not that great these days. Let's for a second take safety out of the issue with a driveway, there. But again, we already have the post office right next door to it or right nearby it, where we've got trucks entering in and out of the post office. So it's already a block where people, they need to watch themselves when they're walking along, because there is more coming in and out from the post office trucks in their yard. So the thing is let's just say the client wanted to have the living space, the 3 floors of living space. You're saying that it would not be feasible then to say, let's forego retail, because retail, the tenants, it's a weak market. Tenants are probably going to fall behind on their rents in a weak market. They're not going to pay us. Why don't we just utilize it for parking? You're saying that that's not a practical answer.
I mean, certainly if there was 0 retail, we could get more cars in. Exactly how many, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the best configuration is at this point. I do know that that is a point. What we had been or the strategy for laying out the building that we had been talking about with the client more so is that the retail space is it supports the building, but it's really about it's a community space. Some of these other buildings that have residential right down to the ground really don't offer much for the community. It's a nice looking lobby, maybe it's a good looking building. As you walk past, you look into the windows, you see someone's living room. It's not offering anything. I think when I think of what we've talked about or what's been talked about with the super block, what are we offering? What is the lot offering the community? It's not just about just all all residential. The Alegria was successful in having a public space that came through the lobby, I believe. We have some comfort stations that are now on the boardwalk, that kind of thing. But this has just been the conversations that we've had, is that the importance of retail is that It's another space for the community. It's not going to be just housing.
Well,
But
no, I mean, it's certainly commercial space, and the thing is, we've got empty commercial space in town anyway. So, I mean, I know, and I hear your argument about that, but I mean, is it really servicing the community, or is it servicing the landlord? I mean, the thing is, in terms of extra income, I mean, so let's be real about this. The bottom line, yeah, it's a service community, but comparing it to the Allegria is not really a valid, to me, because the Allegria, as you said, has comfort stations. The Allegria has just basically a little lounge where people will come in. And I'm going to bet my bottom dollar that this will have none of it. It'll probably be a dress shop or a shoe store. Or it'll be some kind of retail space that people are not going to be able to just go in there unless they're going to be buying something. So I don't really think it's a valid analogy comparing it to the Allegria. I mean,
Well, I mean, the Allegria as a restaurant. There's you go in to buy food and drinks. This could have.
Right.
What I mean by that is what I'm trying to say is that it's a space where the public can go in. Yes, they're gonna.
Okay. No. All right. I understand. I take that back then. So you made your point about that. But I'd like to, at this point, I'd like to get a little input from some of the other commissioners, because I'm sure everybody's been sitting quietly just listening to me speak. And, I'm sure people have some questions, Mr. Gallo, because we understand the concept. I mean, we understand the numbers. We really haven't been presented, though, with any numbers in terms of, what the profitability would be of having 1 floor, 2 floors, 3 floors of residential. It's the fact that, the client is prepared to invest $5 million, but we really don't know, what the percentage of return is, because generally speaking, on new constructions and on buildings that are residential and they have a fair number of units, I mean, usually we like to see some projections, of costs, projections of what it's going to cost to build, projections of what the builder wants to basically net as a profit percentage on the construction. So we've really not heard any of that, why we're talking about 3 floors. But at this point, I really would like to open up, while you're still up on the screen, I'd like to open this up to the other commissioners, please. I'd like you guys to jump in on this, because I'm sure there's questions here.
And we also have.
I don't want to be the only one asking questions. What's that?
We also have Darren and William Gallo on. I have them.
No, we'll get to them too, but I'm saying, well, we still have
Should I leave them muted, or should I unmute them?
I'm bouncing back and forth between screens, between presenters. I mean, let's at least question Gallinaro a little bit more about it, because I'm sure some of the other commissioners have questions. I don't think I answered everybody's questions by what my line of questioning was.
I'll leave them muted. Let me know when I should unmute them.
Can you?
Okay.
No.
Okay. Unmuting Mr. Gallo and Mr. Gallo. You're both unmuted right now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have a question necessarily. I just wanted to make a comment regarding you were just discussing parking, and then we talked about the commercial space downstairs. I just want to make sure, and I hope everybody else is on board. Thinking aesthetically, I don't think it would be pleasing to have parking underneath the building in general, because it is like a walking section of the island, and I think the least aesthetically pleasing would be parking under the building. Like if you look at the other communities throughout Nassau County, right? A lot of their buildings and commercial buildings have parking underneath, and it just becomes very unattractive to the town. So I just want to make sure when they're looking at this and they're thinking about parking, that I don't think putting parking underneath is a solution.
I agree with you aesthetically, Erica. Can you hear me?
Yep.
However, I will say that if this challenge is that retail is suffering, and it may suffer more with time, based on the Amazons, everything else going on, I think that it would actually change the balance, even though, yeah, they'd have to do something aesthetically pleasing to make it work, but it would take out a little bit of retail and add some residential. My challenge there is, this is the block with a Gentle Brew, with a post office. I think about all the times I hear about, how long people, we should, patronize our own retail in town. But I go through town and I have to skip shops and Geno's and sometimes because I can't get a spot. I can't get a parking spot. Now we might have 20 spots permanently stuck under this building or around this building. It will further, cause loss of business to retail surrounding it. That's just something that crosses my mind. So I do think it's a parking problem.
The concept of smaller units that people will walk to and from and mixed uses. It's a great concept, but I agree with Rocco regarding somebody's got to show us why you need 24 units or to make it a viable project. Just to throw out a number of units doesn't there's no justification for it. I also have a question about the parking that is shown in the back there. Now that's parking that would not require any modifications to the building. There's room back there for the right of way and then to turn the cars in there.
Yes, that's similar to what's there now. What we actually did is we're hanging the back of the building over the parking itself. I could show you in the elevations and the rear and perspectives. So the facade or the rear facade at the ground floor is set way back here at column line C.
So does that require modification to the existing building? That's my question.
It's similar to what the existing building has now. What we're proposing is to demolish the existing building.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but this arrangement is almost identical to what is there now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sidewalk beyond the parking as you walk right in, and then the upper floor balcony is hung out.
I didn't realize you were knocking down the existing building to do this.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And there's an alleyway in the back. So the back of the building is going to be an alley, a one-way alley.
Correct. That remains. That's represented with these arrows. The road that's back here remains.
And you couldn't access parking from that, like for the residential units at least?
Well, that's how we are. So this is the rear of the building back here. Here's park in the front, where the retail, you come in off of the sidewalk here. And there's a private entrance for the residential off of Park Avenue side or the southern side of the building where you walk through back into a lobby here with the elevator. And the driveway, the small road that's back there, the existing road that's being utilized today remains. And our building is set roughly 23 feet in from that so that you can come off that existing road and park in here and then walk into the lobby that way. Or yes.
Can I be heard right now, Joe?
I can hear you, Darren. Yeah.
Okay. So existing behind the building now, I just wanted to mention, is about 8 spots. So we're actually adding spots because we're closing out the alleyway that people have been driving through, which is part of our property, the alleyway on the west side that he's pointing to right now.
Oh, I know that
By closing
alleyway.
that off, we add 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a very dangerous alleyway. I've driven down it and, I've seen people almost get hit a couple of times on that sidewalk because they don't pay as much attention there because it's a vacant building.
It's very tight. Yeah, it's an alley.
Yes.
It's very tight. So we're adding 3 more spots by closing that in than what's there today. Behind there. And adding a handicap spot.
Can you hear me? At this point, at the present time, those little spots that exist in there, what kind of utilization does that really have? I mean, was it used when the building, was there and it was the bank and it went in that? I guess nothing went in there after that. Well, who was parking back? What did they actually use that for? Was that something that was just shared by the merchants, or who actually utilized that little alleyway? Did they use it for
I'm not
deliveries?
really sure who utilized it then, but I can tell you now, since we've owned it and I'm friendly with Gentle Brew and Yummy Yummy, basically I park back there, Gentle Brew parks back there, and Yummy Yummy will put 1 car back there today. So it is being used today just for, giving them, being a friendly neighbor, because they usually park in front or across the street, and I allowed it. I said, why don't you just park back here? We have room.
When the bank was there, you parked back there to go into the bank.
That's right.
Going to the bank, that's right.
That's what it was, and it was part of a drive-through thing too. Mhm.
We used it to go to the movies back in the day.
Right, yeah.
Well, I'd certainly like to see some financial justification. This is a very, I think it would be a very important part of a presentation here.
So it's Dennis Kelly speaking again. What we can do is we can go and put that together for you, Mr. Leonetti, Commissioner, and also try to see how we can even make the parking better if possible. And maybe I'll get in touch with Mr. Berrios and talk to him about what headway we've made, as well as getting you that financial analysis you're looking for.
How long has the building been owned by the applicant?
Since December.
I can speak to that, if I may. Dennis, can I just speak?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
I just wanted to give everybody a little history of who I am and why this is Darren Gallo.
Thank you.
Owner.
Your address, please, so we have it on the record, because it's kind of hard to know who's speaking.
Absolutely. I'm a local resident. My name is Darren Gallo. I live at 651 West Penn Street. We also, as you can see on the application, own 143 East Park, which is adjoined to this building. So we spent a lot of time designing and greatly improving 143 East Park, if you know the building. We set up our office, real estate management, investment, and construction company on the second floor in the back half of the building. And we spent a few years, I spent a few years going in and out and looking at this building, watching it be vacant and dilapidated. When we found out about there was an auction on the building, they were basically giving up on it because they weren't getting their rent from the Citibank anymore. And there was nothing they could do with it, really. It's got a vault in there, and you got to knock it down. It can't be repurposed. We decided that it was a good opportunity for us to purchase the property right next door to us and bring the opportunity to bring the downtown Long Beach area up to par with other downtown areas in Nassau County by introducing the mixed use building that you see today, similar to what the comprehensive plan asked for. We wanted to build something that would attract young professionals, as you've heard, that are looking for just this type of building, who either live in Long Beach now or live in Manhattan and are desiring to move to a place like Long Beach near a train station. We specifically designed 1-bedrooms with workspace included, which Joe will show you. And so that would help attract the type of millennials, the type of things that millennials are looking for. Rent, we were looking at it at the market of being affordable between $2,000 to $2,200 a month, which is way cheaper than any other, as you mentioned, boroughs or Manhattan, but still a good range for Long Beach and to get them to come here. We know the type of tenants that would be in this kind of building, that this building would attract with its virtual doorman and high amenities. And as it's been mentioned, and I'll just mention it again, and we'll deal with the parking, but originally our thought was that what we've learned from other buildings we own, they don't usually own cars, the types of tenants that want this kind of building that's close to everything, like the supermarket, the train, the post office, the bank, the movie theater, food, gyms, and even the taxi stand and the Ubers, and they usually bike and walk and Uber. We did, however, plan and design the ability to have those 10 spots that you see today, because we figured of the building that you're looking at, the 24 units, there could be the variable 25% of people living here, let's say 6 units, that might have a car. So by doing that calculation and the design of the building, that's about 10.5 spots for the current zoning. So that's how this all came about. That's how this all got designed. As far as returns and numbers, I have all that, and I can show all that to you if needed. I can send that to you guys. And we looked at all sorts of things. We even looked at 4 stories with no retail and putting all the parking underneath, which I really didn't even want to look at because I didn't like that, as Erica had mentioned. I don't think it's pleasing, but people might think it is. I wanted to tuck the parking in the back the way it was so nobody sees it. And believe it or not, when I looked at this with no retail, the return was the worst return of all of my scenarios. So we left that. This
What's the
is, of course,
square footage on these units? Is the square footage
square
on
footage on these units, Joe. What were they, 7 or 650?
750.
750.
Okay,
So
so
they're large one bedrooms.
right. So if they were larger units and less quantity, you'd need less parking. Also, was that part of the analysis you did also?
So we looking at families, but we just didn't feel the location of this building really was attractive to that and the rents that would be. Actually, we might have actually had a better return that way, but I felt that it wasn't as viable of a building and it wouldn't be as sustainable. We like this one bedroom world. We've owned enough of them to know that someone moves in, they stay for a while, they get a girlfriend, she stays over a little bit, and then they end up moving to the 2-bedroom. And that takes 3 to 5 years usually before they move out, which is what we like, long-term tenants with
What would a projected rents again?
somewhere between 2,000 to 2,200 we felt was the market for this. Because of its high end, it might be higher, it might be low. I don't think it'll be lower, but as you can see from the rendering, and this is going to be a building that doesn't exist here yet, with a very high-end virtual doorman that it literally is a person on the other end that lets in people to deliver Amazon packages, you know, bike storage inside, not outside. We also have the ownership of the Lindell building. So that's 7 one-bedrooms with the Lindell Deli. And outside parking for bikes and, you know, no real amenities there. So rents there have helped us understand what we believe the rents would be here. So we're not just, you know, throwing a dart against the board here. And to go further into my analysis, so when we looked at the 4 stories, the building you're looking at today, that was a decent return. Now I'll give you a number. So a 4-story with no retail, our return on investment would be about 5%, 5.5%, because when you eliminate retail, you eliminate sharing in the taxes, because retail will take over some of your tax base. It also lessens the amount of taxes that the town would get. So we have evaluated looking at something with 3 stories and less retail to accommodate more parking, and it drops our return, actually the worst return, which is about 5%, which is really hard to fathom spending that kind of money for that kind of return. So there is another scenario that we looked at, which it's close enough that I would consider it if we really crunch it, which is the 3 stories. So you eliminate 8 units, leave the 10 spots. Now you have a much better parking scenario. And the construction costs, what happens when you add a story, the construction costs aren't as high per square foot. As you start building, the higher you get, the less it costs per square foot, which helps your return. But with 3 stories, I believe my father and I, who are the sole builders and investors in this, it's something that we could potentially do, basis hoping that the rents are higher than what we're projecting, and they will be maybe someday. So that's something to consider, I think, if that helps in the parking scenario. That one was closer to 7. Okay. And the one we're proposing to you now is closer to 8.
Okay.
And again, this is the reason for the retail is sustainability. If the retail is by itself and it goes out, you're in big trouble. If the retail is there and we lose half of it, the rest of the building can carry it. And, the returns won't look as great, but at least you're safe. You need the residential to save you from any sort of thing like exactly what's happening today. We're having a problem with Lindell. You know, Lindell Deli can't pay its rent, and they're a staple to this town, so we have no intention of doing any harm to them, and we've given them every grace to try and help them through their troubles. But the reason that building's okay is because we have that residential, and they're all paying, working from home.
I mean, that makes sense. How many apartments are there at the Lindell, did you say?
7 1-bedrooms.
I didn't realize there were apartments up there to that size. Does anybody else have any
7
questions, Mr.
1-bedrooms with
Gallo?
no parking. Yep.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Okay. Mr. Kelly, did you want to come back on?
I lost you, Mr. Chairman.
We heard from Mr. Gallinaro. I'm saying, did you want to come on? I think the commissioners have covered a lot of questions right now. So did you want to wrap up the presentation with anything?
I think I would call that a wrap, Mr. Chairman. I think
Right.
the commissioners and my client and the architect did a great job. So I know where you're.
Frazier, do you have anybody on the line that wants to speak for or against?
We haven't received anything on this.
Thank you, Robin. All right, so then I would say that the case will remain open until voting. If Mr. Kelly, your client, wants to submit any other documentation, that time was. And right now the case will remain until voting open, and move on to the next case.
Great. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, guys.
All right. This is the last.
Case number 315. What? Yes. Then there's 2 extensions, but case number 3157, application of Teresa Senatore of 38 Pennsylvania Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5C yard, 9-105.5B side yard, for new front yard deck with steps at 38 Pennsylvania Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as section 50, lot 264, lot 9, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Okay. Good evening. Are the applicant present?
Yeah, this is Joseph Gallinaro. I'm representing Mrs. Sinacori.
Okay. Mr. Gallo, I know your address, but just give it to us for the record, okay?
185 Lagoon Drive East, Lido Beach, New York, 11561.
All right, good. So let's address items of the code. 105.5C, the front yard.
Rob, you're breaking up.
Proposed.
You're breaking up.
Okay, you're proposed. Can you hear me now?
Better.
Can you hear me better? Proposing to go down to 1 foot. At 1 foot standard size deck that we see most of the time, and the 2-foot footings.
Yes, it is.
So basically, that deck would be how long into the front of the
The deck is roughly 9.
Okay.
The
that's
the deck
typical
is
as
one
well.
back. Yes, typical, yes.
And you've got it looks like you've got an interesting covering over the deck.
It's it's an open trellis. Thank you. The issue with the current property is there's a very low porch that's there now that could barely, if at all, fit a regular sized car underneath it. There's one of the, as we've seen, and
This is a 30 by 60 lot, am I correct?
One of the downfalls of having all the elevated houses around with a lot of parking underneath them is that there's a lot of curb cuts and not everyone uses their parking. So Sinacori is one of the houses that's not elevated, and she can't fit under her current patio. So removal of that current patio, elevating the deck so that she can safely drive underneath it and park her car is very important for her.
I understand. That makes sense. The big I have is that the side, and I see that it's tight right now, and because of the fact that there's a stair and landing, it becomes 0.8 feet, so it's not even like a full foot. Is that deck or that land, say, the standard for any reason, or is it just the way the house is?
So what we have in the outside dimension of it is 4 feet. What I've noticed with these decks and the way where they're being constructed is that they're not always executed in the manner that they're drawn. So people select a wide railing, and then what I drew at 3 feet leaves them less than 3 feet to walk past, and that's not a good thing. So I could probably make it outside the dimension of that stair. I could maybe pull it in 6 inches maximum, just to ensure that you have 3 foot clear for that stair.
Okay. At this point, if you were to do that, what would that give us? Would that change? Would that change?
I would go to roughly 1.23.
I mean, would that be feasible for your client? I mean, to utilize that?
Yeah. Yes, I think we can. Yeah, I will make sure that the proper railings installed so she has the amount of space to keep that stair. I could say we could
And I'll
leave.
tell you why.
Okay.
Maybe this is just a mental thing on my part, but the thing is that when we start seeing, we've gotten used to. Let's put it this way: we've gotten used to the 1 foot side yard setback because of the landings on the home raises, etc. But once we start going and dipping below, 1 full foot, and we're working into 0.8, 0.6. We're building right to the property line. I mean, maybe mentally that 1 foot makes me feel, that 1 foot number makes me feel just a little bit more comfortable, even though it's really not a lot of space to begin with. And I understand that there isn't a lot of difference between 0.8 and 1.0, but the thing is, I'd like to really just try to keep it as close to or a little more than a foot, because we really kind of pushed the envelope a little bit by going, right to the property line with a lot of these landings,
Understood. Yes, we can certainly do 1 foot.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any members of the board have any questions so far?
I agree with you, Rocco. I think the side should come down a little bit to give the some consideration to the neighbor if they want to do the same project down the road.
Yeah. I think that is a little better because these side yard landings that both against not only we talk about hazards, we talk about it's really not at the same time, there are practical considerations that we do have to worry because, fire guys, I guess, can get around it. The thing is, even more difficult with what we're approving. So I'd like to see that change, Mr. Gallinaro. You can give us that 1.14 or 1.2. That would certainly, make me feel better of it. Any other members of the board have any questions on this? Mr. Frazier, is there anyone, or Robin, is there anyone who wanted to speak from the audience?
We received 3 letters, all in support of the project.
All right. That being said, if there are no other comments, move.
Grant as amended. I'll second that.
I would move to grant as amended, as Mr. Gallinaro's amended plan.
Okay, Joe, can you just cite your amendments one more time?
On the north side of the property, with the stair and landing, would be held 1 foot minimum off of that northern property line.
Okay.
Okay.
Case number 3157, application of Teresa Sinacori of 38 Pennsylvania Avenue, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.5C front yard, 9-105.5B side yard, for a new front yard deck with steps at 38 Pennsylvania Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 264, Lot 9, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Chairman Morelli has introduced a motion to grant the amended application. Commissioner Leonetti has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Yeah, approve with a modification, with amendment, yeah.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant as amended.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Grant as amended.
Commissioner Reckner?
Grant as amended.
Commissioner Brooks,
Grant as amended.
Commissioner Leonetti,
Grant as amended.
Chairman Morelli.
Grant is amended.
This application has been granted with the amendment stated on the record.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, we just have two
Extensions now, right?
extensions, two extensions requests. The first one is case number 2983, application of West Park Holdings LTD of 2700 Two Brothers Court, Oceanside, New York, for an extension of variance number 2983 for an addition to the existing building at 225-229 East Park Avenue, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 124, lots 14 through 16 on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. We'll introduce a motion for a 6-month extension. Anybody?
Grant.
Motion.
Will second the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Reckner has introduced a motion to grant the extension. Chairman Morelli has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo? Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Reckner?
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Grant.
Chairman Morelli? Extension has been granted. Case number 3707, application of Michael Moriarty of 249 East Broadway, Long Beach, New York, for an extension of variance number 3070 to add a third apartment and new off-street parking in the front yard of 249 East Broadway, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 129, Lot 62, on the Nassau County Land Tax Map. We'll introduce a motion for a 6-month extension.
Make a motion.
Mr. Reckner.
I'll second.
Chairman Morelli has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
Grant.
Commissioner Creighton?
Grant.
Commissioner Acevedo?
Grant.
Commissioner Reckner?
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Grant.
Chairman Morelli?
Grant.
The 6-month extension has been granted. That's it.
Robin, how long is the extension?
6 months.
Okay, for both?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Ending this meeting is now closed. Do you want to have any questions before we close?
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank you all.
hosting the meeting.